Hi, everybody. Welcome back to New York City. My name is Dave Vellante. John Furrier's taking a quick break. He's been going wall-to-wall coverage here at the AWS Summit in New York City. You're watching theCUBE's coverage, and I'm here with Sarbjeet Johal, who's the founder and principal at StackPane. He's his reporter's notebook, we always call you, right? You're out
Yes.
in the field gathering the notes. We've been inside the analyst event all week. So basically, this used to be a one-day event, and now they've extended it to 3 days. It starts Monday night. We had the reception Monday evening. They had deep dives with the analysts all day. They had one-on-ones today during the AWS Summit, which is a one-day summit. Actually, it's one day, but they tacked on, I believe, an AI day. Partners are here, a lot of local, folks, a number of sponsors and partners as well. And Sarbjeet, they gave us, I was on vacation, so I missed it. They gave us a preview of the announcements. They didn't do what they normally do, which is they brief us, but then they brief us deeply in the day before, and then that day we get, the Andy Jassy keynote or the Matt Garman keynote, all day, but we're really, prepped for it. It was a little bits and pieces here. So there's a lot of announcements that we're going to talk about. I think, the ones that stand out that Swami noted.
Yes.
Amazon Nova, customization.
AgentCore is the top,
AgentCore, I think, is absolutely, and then all the components there that we can go through. The Amazon S3 vectors was kind of
interesting.
Had previously been announced. KiiRo is another big one.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through those. But I'll just set it up, Sarbjeet, by saying the following. And this is kind of like the halftime report from reInvent, in a way, kind of halfway through the year, a little more than halfway. Amazon does a tremendous job. And let me say it this way. Almost 20 years ago, Amazon turned the data center into an API.
Yeah.
So they do a tremendous job of speaking in the developer language and talking to developers and putting forth capabilities through APIs and services that developers can access and deploy. And they make it really easy for developers to do that, and they're on a mission constantly to simplify the developers' lives. I would say they do a very poor job of laying out the vision for the C-suite as to what the future of their business can look like. They don't really speak that language. They leave that for the interpretation to the customer. So they work backwards from the customer. That customer is typically the developer, somebody who's technical, and they really focus like a laser on solving those problems. I think they also have a vision, but they don't share that vision openly with the community, with analysts. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Somewhat, not that stark. I don't see that as a stark weakness, but you're right. When you are saying that we always work backwards, right? That implies that customer knows what they're looking for, and then we work backwards and to fill their needs. But you also have to look forward as a vendor, like where we are going. So I think they, as you said, I think rightly so, that they don't paint a cohesive picture of where we are headed and which persona is fit for which of their services. I think that's a go-to-market strategy sort of narrative. They're grappling with it just like other vendors are. Another observation I made is that other vendors have made their life harder because the likes of Facebook are jumping in with their own they and trying to entice the developers, even enterprise developers, to use their models now, right? So now these poor guys at AWS, they are forced to talk about vibe coding, which they don't want to talk about, but they have to, right? So it's convoluting their message. Actually, in one of one-on-ones, I have said that like repeatedly that, hey, please do not mention vibe coding when you are mentioning KiiRo, for example. If you do mention that, have a footnote, like you can also do some vibe coding, because pro developers hate that term. Yeah, right.
Like citizen developer.
Yes,
right?
it is.
It's kind of an insult to them.
It's an insult to them.
Yeah.
And then I mean, because I've been a pro developer, and then I don't like that fact because, okay, you can cook up a utility, a software utility, or a tool by working alone as a single developer, or maybe 2 or 3 developers. But when most of the software software applications we use at enterprises, they're cooked up by tens and maybe sometimes hundreds of developers, right? And for that, you need specs. So people can go to the spec. If a developer is hit by bus, I mean, the way the other folks are showing, like if a developer is hit by bus, your application is gone. No, that's not how it works, people. Most of the software, what we use for mission critical applications, is cooked up by teams. There are specs behind it. Sometimes we deviate from specs, and then when we deviate from specs, we update the specs most of the time. There are flies here. Everybody's here, guys. Including flies out here.
It's New York City.
It's a spy from Microsoft. So yeah. So I think they are forced to say certain things which they don't want to. So that makes the water. It makes the water sort of muddy for them to.
No, I mean, I'd say it this way too. I mean, Swami definitely lays out. I mean, he tells a great story.
Yeah. He was good.
But his keynote today was, hey, this is what we're doing to make your life easier in terms of building agents.
Yeah.
Which is very important. I'm not trying to trivialize that. But I don't get a sense as to where the industry and the economy is going, where business is going from Amazon. I get that from Salesforce. Maybe Amazon purposefully avoids that because they don't want to be hype masters like so many in our industry.
Yeah.
So they should get some credit for that. But I would like to see a little look. And he did, in fairness to Swami, he did a really good job of saying everything has changed in software.
Yeah.
And one term he did use, which I like, which I thought George Gilbert coined, but maybe Swami coined it and George used it, but maybe not, is services as software. You know, software as service. He talked about services as software. He didn't really describe in detail what he meant by that, but I think what he means is, hey, we had all these traditional software applications before the cloud, you know, like ERP and HR, CRM, and then the cloud enabled those to become SaaS, software as service. Now it's like we can generate all these services, all these new services powered by AI in software. Yeah. So services as software. So that's a flip of the switch. And Swami did a great job of laying that out. Again, in my view, speaking the language of developers. And that's all fine. It's just an observation. Trying not to make a criticism there. But we want to go through some of the announcements. I'll just say this. A lot of announcements on bringing together operational, and some of it's NDA, so I can't go too deep on what exactly is happening. But the direction that we saw at reInvent, I'll say it that way. Bringing together operational and technical metadata, using SageMaker, whether it's SageMaker Studio or SageMaker Catalog, to really unify Glue and Data Zone. We can clearly see the direction that Amazon is headed. Using agentic building capabilities that they've announced today. We're going to talk about Amazon Bedrock AgentCore to simplify the building of agents. Being able to govern that, making sure it's secure, that identity is taken care of, that's federated.
The memory part.
The memory, we're going to talk about that. What's missing, in my opinion, we heard this yesterday in the analyst meeting. We heard one of the developers talk a day in the life of the developer, or the decade in the life of a developer, and how her life has changed, which was fascinating. But what's missing in all this is that a really important system of intelligence layer, I'll call it, which harmonizes data, which has a 4D map of the enterprise, which speaks the language of people, because generative AI is the human language.
Yeah.
Databases speak in strings, in ones and zeros. Humans speak in people, places, things, and processes.
Yes.
So a knowledge graph speaks in those terms. And so that's missing here. The harmonization layer, the knowledge graph, what George Gilbert coined as the system of intelligence. Well, he talks about it. Maybe he didn't coin it. He might give somebody else credit, but I'll give him credit because he sort of introduced me to it. But a system of intelligence layer that connects in the BI layer, the metrics and dimensions, and can interpret the business context from that has the metadata, the technical metadata, the operational metadata, unifies that along with the process data, and then serves it up in a governed fashion to agents. So that middle piece is missing. Now, when I push Amazon on it, they clearly understand that. So maybe we'll see something at reInvent. I'm sure they're working on it. They're smarter than most of us. But that was missing. So my point is, a lot of tools to help build agents and make life simpler, solve some of the complexities of working in Amazon. But the future requires that layer that doesn't yet exist. So
the fabric. Yeah.
So your thoughts, and then let's get into some of the announcements. In particular, like you said, the top one here is Amazon Bedrock AgentCore.
Yeah. So
what is AgentCore? Why is it important?
all right, let me address what you just said first, right? So I think having a map of your enterprise process behavior and people, places, things you usually talk about with Gilbert, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time. It's easier said than done because every company behaves differently, right? Every company calls, certain things differently, purchase order, PO, they name it differently. So there's a language aspect to that. And language is fluid. Language is very fluid. I mean, we most of the time, we use English terms in a software world, but you go to China or other countries, they call those things differently. And they, as the software leaves English-only world with the help of Gen AI, the things will become even more complex. And that's what I'm trying to say. So, long story short, I mean, it's a dream goal of us to have that fluidity of the BI is an add-on. It was always an add-on. You have transactional systems and BI will do the business intelligence on top. It was there you go. Yeah, it's separate, right? Separate database and data warehouses and all that stuff. Now we're trying to merge it. I think just the merging part is so complex. Forget about having that layer on top of that. So that will take maybe 10 plus years to get there. Maybe we'll be striving for it forever. But that's that. But talking about what AWS is doing now, with the AgentCore, what they have done is that they have brought in the sort of the pro development, not only pro code, but the pro applications, like professional application development constructs under one umbrella. So they talk about memory, they talk about identity, they talk about observability, and also the gateway. I mean, the API gateway was very key glue piece actually for AWS, which made all other services fly. Everything goes through the gateway, right? So right. They are doing that for the agents now, and they have the runtime. And I think the idea behind runtime is that you can manage state in a more cohesive manner, because not everything is async and I've been saying this for a while now, for about 2 years or so after the Gen AI stuff came in, that even in this agentic age or AI-based application age, we need a facility enterprise services bus kind of arrangement, right? Which is missing, right? So because everything is new, so they're missing pieces, and they're trying to fill in those gaps for professional applications. I think they're doing a good job of that. I like the KiiRo. They get their native IDE. I use it.
So before you go to KiiRo, I just want to frame AgentCore.
Okay.
It's 6 new services. They're managed services, such that any developer can build an agent with open source frameworks if they want to.
Yeah.
And then once that's built, you can deploy it in a secure environment. They take care of all that. And then there's AgentCore runtime. Amazon make sure there's no data leaks. So that's this suite of services, as you said. And I'll just give the quick rundown if I can. There's the AgentCore runtime, AgentCore memory, AgentCore identity, AgentCore code interpreter, AgentCore browser tool, AgentCore gateway, and AgentCore observability. So again, this is here you go. Here's all these APIs that you can invoke. AgentCore runtime, it's a secure serverless runtime. AgentCore memory. They have short and long-term memory.
Yeah, that's good.
AgentCore identity. You can integrate with whether it's Okta or
third parties.
Entra or whatever. The interpreter is a secure sandbox. So for code in JavaScript or TypeScript or Python, I mean, on and on and on. And then at the end of it all is AgentCore observability, because agents are going to do stuff and there's going to be problems. So you need to have the telemetry and the observability and to visualize where those problems are. And that's a set of 6 services that they basically say, here you go, developers, build. And that's the Amazon way.
Yeah. Okay. Amazon is a startup-friendly company, and they are ISV friendly company. Some of the ISVs are the biggest companies out there. SAP is an ISV. That's how I see them. So they will be using, all these basic constructs. All these companies, like Intuit is one of the big ISVs as well. So they will be using all these primitives to build applications. I think where Amazon lacks that connection is the enterprise developer, which is developing applications for in-house use. They are not they don't sell software, or they don't sell SaaS, for example. They build it for their own use. And that's where likes of Microsoft, actually, they will do a good job. But they do a poor job, those guys do a poor job with ISVs and pro sort of developer side, I think. That's how I see it.
So the other big announcement...
Google is in between.
So. You mentioned KiiRo. It's an agentic integrated development environment that integrates natural language specifications for a lot of code focus, code gen, debugging, testing, right? That's what KiiRo is. What are your thoughts?
The main thing is a spec. It's a spec. KiiRo is their native IDE now.
Yeah.
So it will hook up into their core services, which is good. It's based on VS Code. Everybody is using it, including Google. Use VS Code behind the scenes to cook up their IDEs. To me, the IDE is what browser is to the masses. The IDE is to the developers. So if you don't have IDE, which is integrated development environment, what we call it as developers, so if you don't have that, you are just relying on JetBeans or Eclipse or some VS Code or Microsoft's IDE. Like Microsoft had their own local native IDE. Google just got that a couple of years back, and they're maturing it. Finally, I think Amazon got it. I wanted Amazon to acquire Cursor, but they're already building this similar stuff. But I think the very refreshing thing is that it's a spec-driven development. It's a team-driven development. So that's pro code, pro application, bigger applications, complex applications, what we usually cook up at all these enterprises. So I think it's a great thing. And then but it's a first step. They're just dipping their feet into this, and in the beginning, actually, I got some color into that. Like when you launch KiiRo, it tells you that do you want to do vibe coding or do you want to do spec-driven coding, right? And it gives you that forking in the beginning. I was like, can you change your mind later after you do some development? And yes, you can. They told me, and it's a work in progress, but it's a very sort of forward-looking from the industry point of view, not only the AWS point of view, industry point of view. Like, hey, you have specs, you give me the specs, and when I do hit the code completion, or give me some code snippets, or just go code this, it is looking at your specs. And then when the code is changed, you can tell it to update the specs backward, which is a very hard thing for developers to do. Developers don't want to write specs. I mean, they hate that. Developers don't like to muck around with the database as much. They don't like identity part. So all these things are kind of getting taken care of.
All that what they call the heavy lifting.
Yeah, heavy lifting.
What about this Amazon Nova customization? They made a big deal out of that. They brought out Rohit Prasad, who's the senior vice president of Amazon AGI.
His thought process is pretty good, actually. I like him.
Yeah, but I'm not sure why they use the AGI term. But at any rate, I don't know. They're not going after OpenAI. But I kind of like the. I wish they said with enterprise AGI.
They're forced to. Again, coming back to that, they're forced to use AGI. They're forced to use vibe coding, even though they're not those people.
Right, and so, but so he actually laid out in his talk, a number of, items that they had developed throughout the Nova lifecycle.
Yeah.
So Nova Titan was the internal code name.
Yeah.
And they launched Nova they launched at a reInvent, I believe. And so, but at any rate, he, laid out, his roadmap. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that capability? They claim that they were the most highly customized capability for agents.
Yeah, okay, let me tell you what that is. I got some color into that, like talking to the product
go ahead.
managers who are developing this stuff and what's in their mind, and they have blind spots. When you're working at a company like Amazon, you are not keeping an eye on IBM, or like you can't really study all the competitive. You can't do that. That's our job, actually. That's what we do, right? So, I mean, IBM started using their Instruct Lab for training their models, right? Their native model, right? Granites. And, I mean, that's light model. And these guys are telling me that our model is heavier, so it's harder to infuse your own data into it. Number one is that. Number two is that your data stays separate. So Nova sort of ensures you that. That's a good thing. It's a bigger model, and you are infusing the data into bigger model, fine-tuning. Bigger model is harder, so that's another plus thing. S3 pricing goes with it. Like if you are infusing your data, S3 is cheaper than traditional vector databases, so that goes with it. So they're trying to solve that problem of infusing your own data into the models, either using any sort of modes like fine-tuning or a RAG or distilling the model. So they're tackling the problem from all angles. So, but having said that, it's going to be a table stake. It's table stakes going forward from Google. Google will do the same thing.
Sure.
Microsoft will do the same thing. But they are, I mean, they're not ahead in the industry in that sense, but they have some unique advantages which IBM doesn't have because of scale. But IBM started earlier.
Yeah.
They put that sort of.
And IBM's strategy is to really be kind of horizontal integration
and hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah. We're up against the clock, but a couple of the other announcements that you can pick whatever you want. Amazon Nova Act enables agents to take action in web browsers with complex UI interaction capabilities. Amazon S3 Vectors, a new capability to store and query vector embeddings in S3.
That's good.
With built-in support that's optimized for scale and low TCO. I'm sure John has been talking about that a little bit. Amazon Q for developers is being enhanced. This is enhanced with GitLab integration, enhanced MCP support. Okay, so you'll see that. AWS Transform, they've been talking about that for a while. So the code transformation. And the other piece is the capability to take, interact with. They're leading, or at least participating in the standards of MCP and A2A. That's part of, I guess, strands for agents 1.0, right? Support for A2A protocol, data persistence, multi-agent workflows. So a lot of typical AWS announcements. I'll give you the final thoughts on all this.
I think final thought is that we just watched the movie last week with the family. The Formula One movie. Brad Pitt comes in as an old guy, and there's a young
F1.
Yeah, and a young guy. So the combination of young guy and old guy. So that, and there's a dialogue, and they said like few times repeatedly. Slow is steady, and steady is fast. So like the young guy was like going fast and like not winning the race, but then you need to know the maneuverability, right? You need to know the basics of the stuff, right? The fundamentals, the primitives. If you don't know that, you can be fast, but you can't win, right? So I mean, that's what they are. Amazon is slow is fast, fast is slow is steady, steady is fast. So they won't sort of shake the sort of ocean or boiled ocean, if you will, but they are moving in the right direction for the people who build systems at scale on one end, and the people who are building and B2B applications from scratch. So they're very startup friendly on the one end and very enterprise friendly and ISV friendly on the other. In between that gap there, like local developer, inside developer, what we talked about earlier, I think that's where they need to focus a little more on, but I don't blame them. They can't focus everywhere. So, and one only caution I will word of caution to AWS folks is that, hey, yes, vibe coding is being talked about by, all these new entrants and, these tourist, investors and all that stuff, and tourist, tech companies, including Facebook, is trying to get into this. Don't get confused with your messaging. Focus on the developers. You can talk about low code, but don't start using all the new terms and all that stuff.
Nice. Well, they're using them.
Be careful.
All right, Sarbjeet, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming back on.
Thank you very much.
All right, good stuff. All right, keep it right there, everybody. We'll be back right after this short break. This is Dave Vellante for John Furrier and the entire Cube team. We're here at NYC Summit 2025, AWS Summit. Right back right after this short break.